What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. I think it's a good time to go ahead and make this video. Mariners season ended yesterday, and normally I would be really busy on a Monday. I wouldn't have time to talk about the Mariners at all, no matter what. But since we're waiting for a game to be played later tonight, it's probably a good time to go ahead and squeeze this in. And then I don't have to talk about the Mariners again for a while, in all likelihood. So let's just go ahead and close the book on the 2024 Seattle Mariners. They go 85 and 77. Technically, they missed the playoffs by one game, which they also did last year, and like three times in the Robinson Cano era, I think. Like, they love to miss the playoffs by one game. And I think they missed the playoffs by one game 4 years ago, too. Or was it 3 years ago? Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, these Mariners love missing the playoffs by one game. I will say that it's possible in some of these seasons that if teams needed to win another game or two to stay ahead of the Mariners to get in, they may have. Because I know that some of these teams rest starters when they get in. So it's not that simple, but it is indicative of a problem, a clear problem with these Mariners. They're just barely not good enough. And look, I don't think there's much of anything that people are going to remember about this season positively. The most positive thing in the big picture about the 2024 Seattle Mariners is that they finally actually got rid of somebody. They actually got Scott Service out, which you guys know that I don't hate Service and I don't hate what he did for us, but it was certainly time. And maybe Dan Wilson's better. He looked okay. He actually, maybe you could even say he looked good over that last month plus that he got to manage the team, but I'm not going to buy into everything I see based off of about a month plus of baseball. So that's kind of the silver lining. You actually fired your manager and you have a chance to get somebody better. And I I will say it's hard to get even that excited about that because it seems like everybody else is staying except for the guys who are already gone. You got rid of Service, you got rid of, I can't remember the hitting coach's name, but he's been gone for a while. So we're not even talking about that. You're keeping Dipoto. You're presumably keeping Hollander. You're keeping all the people in charge of the farm. Not that the farm is a problem. The farm's great. And of course, you're keeping Stanton, which, as long as that's the case, it's hard to imagine this getting that much better. But that's also the unfortunate reality we've had to accept to be a Mariners fan. So there's that element at play here, not just the frustration of a disappointing season. And I don't want anybody to forget this team had a 10-game lead in the division at one point. And blowing a 10-game lead in the division over the course of like 4 months would not be that outlandish. And if that's what happened, it would be kind of like, well, it's bad, but I'm not going to freak out about it. They blew that lead in what felt like 3 weeks. Like, we were up 10 games, and I feel like it took less than a month for Houston to catch up. And some of that was because Houston decided to pick that exact moment to play like the greatest baseball team ever. I understand that. But Houston this year was not that good. Houston this year was a very flawed team. This was the Houston Astros at their most vulnerable. You still can't beat them. You still can't top them. If they fell behind a couple more games in like May and June, they might have just thrown in the towel on the season. They were that close. And instead, you let them get up to the point where by the time the trade deadline got here, they were actually probably thinking like, okay, we got to add on here because it's clearly going to be us. That's how quickly it happened. So that's humiliating. Like, this is not the franchise that needs to be having things like that happen. Okay? This is not the franchise that needs to let their fans down like that. So there's no way you're going to be able to take anything positive out of this season. You underachieved for sure. You got the best, most healthy, and just all around great season from your starting rotation that you could have ever gotten. Barely anybody got hurt. The players that did get hurt, you probably should have expected to get hurt, like Brian Wu. And even when people were hurt, they were replaced by players that were competent. You had very few bad starts. You got ace level play practically from Wu and Miller, two sources you never would have expected ace level play to come from. And you you still can't get it done. You can't get to 90 wins. You can't win the division. You can't even squeak out a wild card. In the modern MLB, when squeaking out a wild card is supposed to be easy, right? So, what are we doing here? How can you get a rotation that good? We have probably the best rotation in baseball. If not, it's top 3. And you can't even get in? And the reasons why that happened are pretty obvious. The offense was, by and large, bad. It did pick up near the end of the year, but when we needed it, it was bad. And you finally blew the bullpen a little bit. So, Cal, obviously, Cal, that's the one thing from this season at the plate that we're going to feel really good about going into 2025. He played great. He set an all-time record for home runs in the first 4 seasons for a catcher. He had 100 RBIs. He should win a Gold Glove. He's probably the best catcher in baseball right now. It's either him or Perez, I guess. He is a super star and borderline super duper star. So we got that going for us. Everything else, I mean, a Rosarina, I guess. Rosarina was good, but he was only here for 54 games. He didn't play that much. Julio turned it on like gangbusters at the end of the season and ended up with good numbers on the year overall, but he was so unplayably bad for such a long period of time, it doesn't feel that way, right? And what else? Luke Raley was good. Okay. Maybe we're excited about that. Robles, credit where credit's due. Robles has earned his extension, earned his place in Seattle. So, okay, if we're being completely fair here, it wasn't all terrible offensively, but I mean, is it even going to matter? Like, is somebody like Luke Raley, what's he going to do next year? Is he so good now that we just think he's going to be money in the bank every year, hitting 130 ops plus, giving you over 20 home runs, giving you a batting average around 250, giving you an OBP of around a third, or getting on base about a third of the time? I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know what JP Crawford is anymore. I know his fielding was really good this year. I know he was excellent at shortstop this year, but the bat has completely abandoned him. And it's a horrible time for that to happen, because if his bat was still there even somewhat, he'd be borderline all-star worthy. And instead, people are going to wonder if they even want him. You know how hard it is to be a shortstop who is elite defensively and still maybe not worth playing because your bat is that bad? Especially given where we were a couple years ago with JP's bat. Even last year. Like, what happened here? Right? Rojas, I know the numbers look okay, but I'm telling you right now, Rojas started the season off so hot, you guys have no idea, if you weren't watching from day to day, how bad he had to be for his numbers to crash to this degree. I mean, Haniger's beyond cooked. We might have to bring Garver back, and he was better at the end of the year, but he's still, overall, you're probably looking at a backup level player. I mean, we got rid of Ty France finally, so our never-ending dance of mediocrity, not even mediocrity with Ty France, is finally over, so that's cool. Maybe Justin Turner comes back to be a backup. I'd love that. But Polanco, we better not fall for the Polanco stuff, man, because Polanco played really well at the end of the year, but we better not fall for it. I don't want that guy here. We don't need that. He's probably going to get hurt even worse next year than he was hurt this year. He's a disaster defensively, and when he goes cold, it's so unbelievably cold that you can't tell me it's worth keeping him around. I'm sorry, but we got to look for a second baseman somewhere else. So, I mean, that's not a solution. Dylan Moore, he played way too much this year To his credit, he gutted it out and actually played decently on the year, but really, really frustrating that we have to lean on him as much as we do. Um, it's there are going to be reinforcements next year from the farm system. We are probably going to get to see some Locklear. I think Harry Ford's going to get some time, but like where do these people fit in? Like Harry Ford's a catcher. How's that going to help us? We're already getting such elite production from our catcher. Look, giving Cal a day off every now and then is great, but is Harry Ford going to come up and be noticeably better than Mitch Garver was for you this year? I don't think that's making anything better. Are we going to see more from Ryan Bliss, or is his bat not good enough? I'm just confused. I don't know what we do here because I know we're not going to break the bank here. I know we're not going to suddenly bust out a bunch of money. So you keep Julio, Arozarena, and Robles in the outfield. That's good, right? If those are your three guys, you're feeling good about that. None of those guys are super old. None of those guys are super injury prone. They're all going to be pretty good in the field for you, so you don't have to rotate somebody like you did with Haniger. Maybe Haniger's like a full-time DH at this point, and you hopefully never have to play him because I truly think he's cooked. I think he's beyond cooked. And I guess you've got a little something there, but how are you going to address this infield? You're probably stuck with Crawford, and that's not the end of the world, but you're going to have to find a second baseman. You're going to have to find a third baseman, and you're probably looking for a designated hitter as well. Because I'm just assuming that Luke Raley can play first base full-time, right? I'm just assuming that. I think that he can, but what if he can't? So I'm scattered all over the place, and I'm just frustrated at what this offense does because it just seems like no matter what you do, you end up here every year. And then, of course, the bullpen, just to talk about them a little bit here. I'm not going to spend too much time on the starting rotation in this video because there's not much to say. They played awesome. I know Kirby had some bad starts at the end of the year. I know occasionally this guy or that guy or the other guy gets jumped on. But, I mean, look at these numbers. You got 30 or more starts from 4 guys. Look at the ERA, and I know ERA is not a great stat anymore, but look at these numbers. What else do you want? You're getting sub-3 ERA from Bryce Miller for 31 starts, and that wasn't good enough for you to get in. Look at Brian Wu, sub-2.9 ERA. Look at how good Brian Wu was this year, and I know he missed starts, but that wasn't enough to get you in. Emerson Hancock wasn't good, but was he unplayably bad? No. He's just a generic, not very good number 6 starter in this league. You should have been able to get in with him making 12 starts over the course of the season. So I'm not really going to say anything about that because, I mean, these guys are studs. And I got nothing bad to say about none of them. The bullpen, obviously, look, we took a big hit when we lost Brash for the year before we even got him, right? Okay? That's not our fault. But we did make a disastrous trade for Yimi Garcia to have him show up and basically not do anything to help us, just be completely worthless. We made a terrible trade for Mike Bowman and then immediately just push him out of here because we realized, oh wow, he can't do anything. And that is our fault, and that's why we were here. That's why we had to give Munoz so much work. He ended up pitching almost 60 innings this season, and I think he was working through an injury near the end there because he had problems that he usually doesn't have, and he still had an elite season. Right? Colin Snyder, I guess, was good, right? We used him a lot, and he actually ended up posting some really good numbers. But Spear never really got going. There's really not much to say about Spear at this point. At this point, I just assume he's never going to get it back. And the guys who you expected to be at least passable for you, like Thornton and Voth and Saucedo, these are the guys that Jerry always hits on. He always puts together an elite bullpen no matter what. And those guys just weren't good enough. We should have won 90 games this year. And even with all the problems we had on offense, I think we easily get to 90 wins if we have a typical modern Mariners bullpen. Easily. That's how bad it was. And, you can point to specific games, of course, and you can probably get to 90 just based off of that. But it's also these little moments here and there that people forget about of bullpens blowing games. Like, you might get to 95 if we have typically elite Mariners bullpen this year. But you whiffed on Stanek, and you whiffed on, like I said, I guess you could say Spear. You really whiffed on Garcia and Bowman, and guys like Thornton and Voth just didn't really have it this year. Like that's a lot of mistakes, okay? Matt Brash getting hurt is not a mistake. That's just bad luck. But some of the stuff you did here was not okay, and we paid for it. So Santos too, by the way. I know Santos, that was kind of a Hail Mary anyway. You weren't necessarily depending on Santos to play a lot this year and be that great for you, but there was a little bit of a bet made on Santos being able to do something for this team, but you missed on that too. So I ask again, why is Jerry Dipoto still here? He made the same kinds of mistakes that Service did. And I understand that you didn't have to fire the GM right then and there the way you had to fire the manager right then and there, but it's the off season now. Maybe you should think about that. So yeah, like I said, the starting rotation really, really nails. I think even Kirby, who did really fall off at the end of the year, I think there was a lot of bad luck in there. And I do think that there needs to be some work done on getting him to understand that it's okay to walk a batter every now and then. I think that's a reason for a lot of the trouble he runs into. But, like, you're getting this from your top five. You're getting over 100 ERA plus from all five of the guys in your rotation, including two guys who go over 125, who combine for almost 50 starts. It should not be a question of, can you get in? The question should be, are you getting the top seed? So, you want to nitpick on Kirby, you want to nitpick on Castillo, go ahead. I'm not really going to do that because those guys played well enough for us to have good results this year, and we didn't get those good results. So, I don't really know where else to take this. It's tough to see a way out because I know we're not going to spend a lot of money this offseason. And honestly, I think we've seen that most of the time when these teams spend big money in the offseason, it doesn't go that well. But I'm not asking for us to go spend $1 billion. I think there are ways to make this team a lot better with money being spent in the right places, and we just don't do it. All right, see you guys later. Go Mariners.